Hi, I'm Michelle Singer, and I do legal and business affairs for Jazz and Classics, which is all three labels, as you probably know by now. Which legal and business affairs means I'm the lawyer for the company, and I got here to do legal and business affairs in one of the two ways that anybody gets here. I got here taking the more traditional route, going first to a law firm and then coming into the music industry. Obviously, the other way to do it is to come right from law school into the music industry. If you talk to different people, you'll get a difference of opinions on which is the better way to do it. And like most things in life, there's pros and cons to both. I'm happy I did it the way I did it because I think it's useful to have basic legal training. You're not going to really get that here in a record company. Or frankly, even if you went to a music law firm, you're not going to get that in quite the same way because it's very specific and it's very focused. I was a litigator before I started doing this, and I think that sort of general training that I got has served me well, even though I don't do day-to-day litigation. As I said, there are certain people who will be looking at your resumes who will want to see that, in part because they agree with me that having that training is useful, in part because it's a way of them knowing that you've got some good training as a lawyer. Other people don't care, and they appreciate the advantage you will get coming right out of school because you will be ahead of the game as far as knowing the music business. And for those of you who have absolutely no interest in going to a law firm, it's an acceptable way of doing it. You'll certainly be a little bit ahead of the curve, and maybe you'll learn some of the business aspects earlier or deeper in a way that people like me, came to later in the game. There's no real way of telling you how to break into the music industry. If you come right from school, you can intern. That's one possible way, and you meet people. It sort of fell into my lap because I worked for a law firm that represented Sony. And when there was a litigation, as I said, I was a litigator, I got involved. I met some of the attorneys at Sony. It was then actually CBS Records, and they were looking for somebody, and that's how I got here, which is actually a not uncommon way of doing it either. So that's luck. It's something I was interested in doing, and it happened. Honestly, I wasn't focused on music at all. I liked the idea of entertainment law just because it sounded more fun. That as simple and unsophisticated as a reason as that, it just sounded like more fun to do something than be a corporate lawyer or a litigator. So I sort of had my general sights set on that, but it was nothing that I targeted. And in fact, when I interviewed for my job at Sony, I was asked whether if I had the choice of going into film, television, or music, I would pick music, and I lied and said music when it was absolutely not true. As it turns out, I'm very glad that I ended up here because it's my impression that lawyers in the music industry are more involved and play I don't know what the right word, I was going to say bigger, and that's not the right word, but play a slightly different role than they do in other areas of entertainment. The reason being twofold. Number one, our contracts are a little more complicated. Maybe needlessly so, but that happens to be the case, just the way the structure of these contracts is. Also because we get involved very early. In the music industry, you typically don't put an artist, or hopefully don't put an artist into the studio to record until the deal is done, everything's papered. That's not the way it often works in film and television. As a lawyer, you're coming in after the fact. And what lawyers find frustrating, generally corporate lawyers, is that you're not really involved in the deal-making process so much. Sometimes you are just the paper person. You're drafting the deal. You're not necessarily the deal maker. In the music industry, you're very much the deal maker. And that's why it's called business affairs and not just legal, because we really do get involved in the business of the deal. For better or for worse, one of the I think, nice things about being a lawyer in this business is that you deal really with all the people in the company and in not just the area of the company you work with, but in the broader company as well. I always say that I know when everybody else in this company is going to get busy because it starts here. Like I said, I'm the deal maker. I bring in the initial deal. I may not, I mean, in fairness, A&R, I guess, would start first because they'll find the act. But then, I'm one of the first people it comes to because the A&R person comes to the lawyer and says, we found this artist that we're interested, we need to put a deal together. So right away, I'm dealing with the A&R person. I'm going to be dealing with the president of the label, who obviously has to be interested. I'm dealing with the GM of the company. And we get the finance person involved. And we'll sit down and we'll have a conversation about, and sales, about what we think, make some projections about what we think this artist is going to sell initially so we can figure out what we think we should offer. So before we had really conversation one with the artist or artist management, I've now touched bases with a variety of people within the company to sit down and talk and figure this out. We then make a proposal, and the proposal sometimes goes to a lawyer, it sometimes goes to artist management. In rare cases, it'll go to an artist themselves if they don't have representation, which we all hope they do. So that's how it comes to me. Once the deal gets done, it then gets passed on through the rest of the people in the company, through publicity, through marketing, as they start working the record, working the album through A&R, and they get in the studio. My job is not done because I have to continue to make sure that the monies are getting paid out properly, that they're being accounted to properly. There are questions that come up all the time about what rights we have to the recording. Can we do anything we want with this? Or are there certain things we need to go back to the artist for to get consent? So you stay very much involved with it even as it technically passes off your desk. And that's why you stay involved with really every aspect of this company. There's a person called an A&R admin person, I'm not sure you're familiar with, who really is the person who books studios, he watches the budgets. That person often reports into business affairs because it's very closely tied to setting up the deal, and you have to know what's going on. And as I said, we work with royalty accounting on that end of things to make sure that everything's getting paid out properly and to address questions. I also deal with on a corporate level because there are all kinds of things that come in that aren't specific to Blue Note or Manhattan or Angel, but have to do with really more operational issues. For example, we may put together a variety of clearance lists. Which artists, you'll create artists that say, we know these artists are cleared. In other words, you have the right to use this product, so you don't have to come back each time and ask. Those things tend to get done on a bigger scale. Following litigations that go on that affect the industry, following developments in new media. We once a month have new media calls with all the lawyers throughout EMI, so we all talk about issues that are coming up, deals we're working on, and we all stay current on things. So and there's the distribution company, get involved in distribution companies. Sometimes we do distribution deals where we're almost sort of a channel, just to push something through the distribution company. So the nice thing about it is you get involved in this business on all different levels, and you get to deal with all the different people in the company. So the roster is almost meaningless because, for purposes of this question, because even when an artist goes out of term, if you will, and term simply means off the roster, in other words, they're not actively recording for us anymore, you still deal with them. There are any numbers of times an artist will continue to have a consent right over an album or another piece of product, even if they are no longer actively recording for you. We try to keep that to a minimum, but it does happen. Even if an artist isn't alive, you have to deal with their estate. So we have a large catalog. Even though our active roster may not be as large as some other bigger labels, we have a very big catalog because this label has been around for so long. It's such a wonderful label. And dealing with the estates is harder than dealing with the live person any day of the week, trust me. So I don't know. It is large. It's hundreds. There are hundreds of, if you're looking at the catalog, there are potentially hundreds of contacts that I have out there. It's a lot. I think having worked in a traditional law firm was very beneficial. It gives you just sort of lawyerly instincts, for lack of a better word. You will find, if you haven't heard already, that law school and practicing law are two different things. Yes, it's good to go to law school. It will help you learn, help you think in a certain way. But really when you get out there and do it is when you really develop as a lawyer. So I very much value that. Even though I don't do litigation day to day, when I'm dealing with a contract, it makes me a little more sensitive to certain loopholes or problems. I think I have a better nose for when a problem may arise with an artist, or when I need to bring it to, I need to go to the litigators and turn it over because I actually think something's going to become an issue. And I know corporate lawyers bring a lot to the table too. I actually wish I had a corporate background because we do corporate type deals. And while I will not handle that myself, I may be able, often you will use outside counsel because you can't specialize in everything. Those music lawyers who have a corporate background have an edge over me in that sense because they're just a little closer to the deal. They understand it a little better. So I very much value a traditional law firm experience. Streetwise, it will have absolutely nothing to do with your skills as a lawyer and everything to do with your skills as a person, from being a diplomat, from just having, what you might call street smarts and knowing how to work with people. It's very important to work with people in this business because internally, as I was saying before, you work with everybody, but also you've got to remember that you are dealing with people who are on the other side of the fence from you, the lawyers and the managers. And while your interests ultimately are the same, and it's one of the things I like about doing this, ultimately everybody wants to get the deal done, everybody wants to make good music, everybody wants to be happy with what they're doing, as opposed to litigation where you can all just kind of part ways. Everybody's got to work together at the end of this. You really have to represent your client's interest, but maintain good relationships. And that's just having having a sense of people and how to work through contentious situations, because they will be that way from time to time, and end up feeling good about it at the end. Not only because the artist is going to be now part of the family, and the manager will be, and you'll be dealing with them all the time, but because you're going to meet those same lawyers again and again and again. It's not a large, the music bar is relatively small, even on a national scale. You're going to deal with the same people. You want them. You want to be able to work with them well because it's a better result for everybody and it makes your day more pleasant. I think you have to be strong, and strong doesn't mean tough or overly aggressive. There are some of the best lawyers I know in this business are soft-spoken. I'm not, but that's why I'm going out of the way to say you don't have to be. There are some very soft-spoken lawyers who are firm, but I think people get a reputation for being the types of lawyers people want to deal with if they feel you're trustworthy, that you're not going out of your way to give them a hard time, and that doesn't mean you can't, aggressively represent your client, aggressively meaning do a good job. We all respect each other. Some of the toughest lawyers I've dealt with, I respect. And in fact, I prefer to deal with lawyers who know what they're doing because I know they have a sense of what to push for and not what to push for. So it's just being straight with people, not going out of your way to give people a hard time, and doing your job well. And that works for everybody. To some degree, each company has their own issues, if you will, or what are things you can give or not give. Some care a lot about mechanical royalties and how much you can give there. Others are less concerned about that. So it's a little hard to answer that generally. The things that obviously go into the basics of every deal that you think about that are the economic ones. Obviously, what royalty you're paying, what advance you're paying, whether you own the master. And while that's not purely an economic issue, it really is, because when you own it, you tend to have more rights, so it translates into what you can do with it and earn money. Also, the length of time you own it. If it's a licensed deal, it's typically going to be for a shorter period of time, less time to exploit it, less time to earn money on the album. Territory is a big issue. You want to own things worldwide. You don't want to have to share the world. I'll have this country, you have that country. All of these things are always important, and sort of how they mesh together is the result. In other words, sometimes you can offer an artist a bigger advance and a smaller royalty, or the other way around, and it's really how it comes together that you analyze. Recoupment is the process of earning back any monies that were spent in connection with the album, and that could be money spent on the actual recording or monies put into the artist's pocket as an advance. We talk about the company recouping or earning back that money. And that's an important concept, because the artist or the producer, whomever, don't get paid a royalty until they are recouped. Now, it gets a little tricky because you have to understand what's called the rate of recoupment. I'm just going to give you a figure, make up a figure. If an artist is earning a 16-point retail royalty, that's your royalty. You're going to recoup based on your royalty. I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but there's a rate at which you earn back that money. And different people recoup at different rates. So a producer may recoup at a different time than somebody else recoups, or the artist, or the company for that matter. But until you recoup, there'll be your advance, however much the artist got paid, and however many recording costs, and other costs that are considered recoupable costs, such as certain marketing costs. So until that is earned back, you will not get monies beyond what you got up front, which is the upfront advance. Probably a good percentage do not. What percentage that is, it's hard to say, and that really depends also on the genre of music. If you do huge deals where there are big advances, there's going to be less chance of recouping, unless the artist really hits. If you do a smaller deal, or then the budgets tend to be more tightly controlled, like they can be in the jazz world, you can see more artists recouping. You do have to sell, obviously, and if you're not going to sell, you don't. But if you really keep it tighter, and that's specific to labels sometimes and to genres. Absolutely, and it's not so much that you necessarily focus on recoupment, because as I was saying before, different people recoup at different rates, and it's actually possible for a record company to start earning money before the artist recoups, because again, the artist is recouping just at what they're earning off of the album, and the artist doesn't earn as much off of an album as the record company does. So they recoup at what they earn. We earn more, so we're going to recoup the costs faster. But yes, that is looked at. But we typically look at whether we're making money. And so sometimes that's the same question, but not always. An artist can be unrecouped and we could still be making money. It's true. I'm going to say it up front on camera. But yes, that in concept, what you're asking is, do you look at the life of a deal at a certain point, record by record, and say, is this profitable? Is this a deal that makes sense for us? And absolutely. And that will factor in, of course, to whether we exercise an option for another album. Because almost always, particularly in these days, you move forward based on the record company's option, not the artist option. The record company's not going to commit to doing X number of albums. We always make it an option. And we evaluate whether the deal is making economic sense. I will say, and I think this is a very important thing, one shouldn't underestimate, again, personality in this. I've seen it happen where, if the company's on the fence about whether to exercise an option, they're not sure whether they're going to do it or not, whether they should, but maybe they give it a chance. They absolutely will factor in the relationship. It's important for an artist to have a good relationship with the record company too, and the manager. Is everybody getting along? Are we enjoying this whole process? Then maybe you take a chance, because everybody still believes in it, and everybody's enjoying it. When everybody's suffering and you're really not making money, you're going to be less likely to do it. And then the final thing is too, that really is also label by label. You have people like Bruce Linville who really believe in their artists and are going to give them every chance they can to record and to make money here, and he wants to do this because he believes in this music. And it's one of the wonderful things about being at Jazz and Classics and Blue Note, because we have a real music guy at the head who is in this business because he wants to record these artists. A controlled composition is a composition that is owned. The rights in that composition are owned or controlled by the artist. I'm going to back up a little bit just to say that in every piece of recorded music, there are two general sets of rights. You have the rights to the the physical product, the master, which is owned by the record company, and there's the rights to the composition that's recorded. And the person who owns that composition is the person who wrote the composition, which may have nothing to do with the artist. There are cover songs all the time. That whoever wrote that song and controls it, unless they gave their rights up, continues to own it even when it gets recorded by another artist and the record company. So the controlled composition clause is the clause that basically deals with the compositions that are owned and controlled by the artist. And what every record company asks is that the artist grant the record company rights in their controlled compositions. We say they have to go get us the rights in the ones they don't control either, but that's what the controlled composition means. And there is a statute that addresses how much anybody has to pay for the rights to use somebody's composition. You do not have to ask permission to use somebody's song. You only have to agree to pay them. That's a public policy issue. That's why there is law that says anybody can do it. You can't copy somebody's physical recording, but you can use their song as long as you pay. And so the statute addresses how much you pay. Currently, it just went up to 8.5 cents. I think I'm getting that right. It just changed. It was 8 cents. We're now at 8.5. What we do, and almost every record company do, will specify in a contract that the artist agrees to grant us the right to use their controlled compositions at whatever rate we agree, because you can always agree whatever you want to agree. And often you ask for 3/4 of the statutory rate, but sometimes you give 100% of the statutory rate. So that's sort of it in its basic form. What an excess mechanical royalty is the following. On top of saying we will pay you, let's just say 8.5 cents a song, the record company then says, but we're only going to pay a total amount of X. Often it is expressed in terms of a cap on the number of songs we'll pay on. So we'll say we'll pay you 8.5 cents a song, but we'll only pay on 11 songs. So if you go out and put 16 songs on your album, there's going to be excess mechanical. Now, if it's your own song, then you just don't get the money. If you put cover songs on so that whoever owns that needs to be paid, there's actual money that needs to be paid out that is not the record company's responsibility, because we've said we're only paying for on 11 songs times 8.5. If you put 13 on and 2 of those are covers, whoever owns that song still gets paid the statutory rate. I'm sorry if this is going to sound overly simplistic. I would go to the best law school you can go to, because for better or worse, that's, again, an easy barometer for people to look at. Again, my track was to go to a law firm, and it's very hard to break into the music industry. So don't worry about going to law firms. Go to a law firm. Go to a good law firm where people, if you want to work in a certain area, local firms are recognized by companies, unless, of course, you go to a huge national firm. People are going to look at you fairly or unfairly on your paper until you get to a certain level in your career where you could just network. So early on, it may not be right, to just judge somebody on their paper, but that's all they have to judge on in large measure. That's what's going to get you in the door first. So you're going to go to as good a law school as you can anyway, but that does make a difference, rightly or wrongly. And similarly with a law firm, don't be afraid of going to a law firm that you may think is too corporate or too whatever. People will know how to judge you. They'll think, oh, they have good training. As I said before, lots of people just look for that. They want that. When you're in law school, honestly, I don't think it much matters if you take entertainment courses or this or that. It just doesn't, because it's too unrelated to the world. Maybe a benefit if they do have some professors from local law firms, entertainment law firms teaching those courses. That's a way of meeting people, because the next part of this is just networking. If you can network in your law school and they have seminars set up or cocktail parties where they bring in people, go meet people. That's how you do things in life generally anywhere. The more people you meet, if you impress people, they may remember you. Maybe they'll remember you if you come in and talk to them in their firm or in their company a few years later. If there are internships, that's a good way of meeting people. People don't always get jobs through internships, but it doesn't hurt, and it'll help you figure out if you like this, So those two things, do as much traditional, obvious things as possible, and then just meet as many people, talk to as many people as you can, through bar associations, through whatever. Like I said, for me, that's how it happened. I was in a traditional law firm, through a case, I met some of these lawyers. We obviously hit it off. They needed somebody. I had absolutely no background in music, but they didn't care. They figured I was a decent lawyer, and they, liked me well enough, and off I went. I was saying to Jim that anybody who's watching this should really feel free to call me, to elaborate on any of this, to ask general questions. As I said, talking to people is how you figure things out for yourself, how you get places, how you help understand things. People have done it for me, and I'm more than happy to do it.